This thing actually makes me feel a little bit like Tank at the beginning of The Matrix when he realizes Neo could be the one.
If you are, it's a very exciting time.
I think we might be onto the next fractal Fantix over here. Good afternoon, welcome to Turbo Tortoise Tech. If you're new here, I'm Reese of the 4-piece variety or Walkie XXL, and I like doing nerdy things on this channel. And so, if you've noticed, my test bench is set up so that the highest point for the water cycle will be over here, so that the air sits there, because you can never get these things 100% deep cool. Actually came up with a kind of, on the shirt that I'm in, I know, they kind of came up with a cool solution to that, where they put in a little inflatable bag to take out the last little bit of air. But even then, you're probably still going to have a little bit, but this just ensures it doesn't go through the pump. It's almost like I was thinking when I put it together. Anyway, we just strapped a piece of angle iron basically on here that I can do proper tests for water cooling kits. And wow, this Navis F240, especially at its price point, is what I would call more than competitive. And I've never had to switch off as many devices to test the fans, because they quote it as basically being 0 dB, and it's actually true. The only noise it makes is the air itself hitting the front of the radiator, which is unbelievable. The fans are also extremely good at their job because they make a difference per performance per RPM. They actually had some impact on the performance. Anyway, before I get too ahead of myself, let's go through what's in the box. So inside the packaging, you've got all of your fittings in one little bag. It does include a bit of thermal paste, and there's about enough in there for 2 applications. We haven't used it because I wanted to keep it consistent between the 2 coolers. Obviously keep the testing down so that any sort of variable is accounted for. But the fans come pre-installed, which is a nice plus. They've also channeled the cable so that it would sit out the back if you were going to mount it in the north sort of side like that. It does seem like they kind of wanted you to mount it in the opposite direction, almost have it like with the tubes pointing towards the back, and then the cooler positioned in that sort of orientation, but to rechannel it is hardly the end of the world. And then the pump has a SATA connector on it, and then has its own PWM connector, and that's the only thing I couldn't get working. The PWM for the fans, 100% absolutely no problem. The one for the header wouldn't read at all. I even went into BIOS and tried to change it to the DC mode to see if that would give me some joy, but unfortunately absolutely nothing. The installation process is the only other area where I had a little bit of a problem getting the back plate actually mounted. It didn't want to like go around the mounting plate on this, so you might want to get a Thermalright CPU bracket, which will probably alleviate that sort of problem. But with a little bit of a faff, I did actually manage to get it mounted. And then the screws that go on the top over here, they do have springs in between there, and I love spring loaded because it just means that it's very unlikely if you transporting it that it's going to come off, because there's always tension on that, which is a big plus. And secondly, that it's got the right amount of pressure then applied to the top of the CPU cooler. Now, as I said, for testing, we're going up against the H100i over here, and I have lapped the surface with 1000 sandpaper at some length to make sure that there wasn't a single ridge or a single even scratch on this before I put it on the 13600K, to make sure that we put down the absolute best baseline scores that we could for both Cinebench and then for AIDA64 stress test on a 20-minute run. I also ran it when it was colder, and so that it got an even extra advantage. And then I ran this the following day where the temperature had gone up considerably. So I actually put this on the back foot as much as humanly possible to see what it'll actually give us. And the performance results, especially where AIDA are concerned, are basically kind of the same. Obviously the Navis did a little bit worse because its pump is not rated as much flow as the Corsairs, but this is where those fans come into play. And if we look at the 100%, it's now basically neck and neck. Now you say, oh, it's easy just to max out the fans and then I've got to deal with all this noise. That's the point. What noise? At 25 and 50%, there is no difference in the amount of audio that the sound meter was picking up, or the decibel meter at least. It basically is exactly the same. Only at 75 do we get a 2 decibel increase, and if you put that inside of a case, you're not going to hear anything. And then at 100%, it popped up by about a 6 decibel increase over 50%. That's now 2000 RPM. At 50%, it was averaging between, say, 1100 and 1200 at its sort of peak. So literally basically double the amount of RPM for a 4 to 6 decibel increase. That is unbelievable. It is one thing that I sort of had to like go back and do again, and just to make sure that what I'm reading is correct. Now, I don't know what the pump was running at. This is the thing. Did it actually give full power? I'm assuming yes, considering it's powered by the SATA and the PWM didn't pick it up. It means that it probably was running at its absolute maximum. So for 1,600 Rand local price, that's basically the ballpark that you're going to look at paying for this in South Africa with a 3-year warranty. Check what it is in your environment. That should be about $90 American or $80, 85, I don't know. Our rate of exchange changes more than the weather in Cape Town. But versus a cooler that's 1,000 Rand or at least $40, $50 more to be within spitting distance in a worse condition and facing up against a lapped surface like this, that is kind of nuts. I'm kind of astonished by the noise factor as well. If silent gaming is your thing, this is as quiet as it gets. The only thing quieter than this would be passive cooling, and in that case, you're kind of defeating the purpose of having water cooling. So pros and cons time. Pros, it's cheap for what it is. 3-year warranty is pretty good. The pump head is kind of large, and I actually put that in the pro column. I kind of like that. The mounting system is very good. The con being that the back plate was a little bit difficult, that I couldn't get the PWM header to work. That might just be that this product is faulty, which is probably more than likely the case. And that's really it. Those were the only 2 real cons in the whole usage of the system. Another pro I would actually say is that these have rubberized corners, whereas even on my H100i Pro XT RGB Capellix whatever, they don't even do that on these. Not that it's really going to rattle, but it is a nice touch to have on them. I think they've completely knocked this out of the park. On value, it's right up there actually with Deep Cool and things like the LS 520 Premium. That being actually more expensive than this, you can get RGB versions of this, probably an extra $100 or about less than $5 in America land. So yeah, if you want a DRGB, I'm glad they have that. I'm a big DRGB fan, honestly. I would remove all of that from my PC if possible, and this would allow me to do that and actually have something that performs well, even on like a 190 watt part like a 13600K. Anywho, that is all I have for you on the Navis F240. If you have enjoyed this, please do hit us up with a like and subscribe. I am going to be testing the Ferra 5 and the double-sided Ferra air cooler on this exact test bench as well, which we'll bring out probably early next week. Until next time, I hope you guys stay safe, keep well, and I'll see you on the flip side.